Hello, welcome to Man in the High Castle Season 3 review. In this installment, we review Episode 10, Jahr Null. And the question we are going to ask is, at the end of this season, did the new showrunner stick the ending or did he crash and burn? Tune in and find out. Episode 10, Jahr Null, received a composite score of 9.1 on IMDb, and the highest composite score came from the male demographic 18 to 29, and it received a 9.3, and the lowest score was the female demographic. This time, the last two episodes, it was the females ages over 45. This time it was females 18 to 29. And it was a score of 8.8. Otherwise, all the other demographics were pretty even. So I suspect that part of what caused the demographic of women over 45 to have that lower score, partly may have been due to small sample size, because I believe it was under 20. And I said I would not, there's some of the scores, the under 18, they're under 10. Under 10 people were applying. And I said I wouldn't count any category of less than 10. But, you know, in statistics, I believe you need at least 1,000 before they feel you've eliminated variance. So under 20, that category of the women over 45, those scores may fluctuate a lot because of the smaller sample size. So it is what it is. Director of the episode, Daniel Percival, is also one of the executive producers, and this is, I think, the third episode he's directed. The writers were Eric Overmyer and Wesley Strick. And I believe that pairing, the director and writers, were responsible for episodes 1, We Care More, I believe was the name of it, and episode 5, which I don't remember the title, but that's the one where Joe Blake is killed. So they were responsible for 1st, 5th, and 10th episodes. Kind of the keystone, not kind of, they are the keystone episodes of any season. Directed by Gonzalo Amat, who also directed another episode in the season. And the location breakdown for episode 10. 3 scenes in the Pacific Coast states, 1 in the neutral zone, and 14 in the greater Nazi Reich. So the vast bulk, 75% of the episode in the greater Nazi Reich, because of the plot line of the Lackawanna plot line, the Nazis attempting to go to the multiverse. So that took up a majority of the airtime for this episode. And then I went ahead and I totaled up the season where locations were, the numbers of scenes in each location. Because I had long suspected that the greater Nazi Reich had more scenes each episode. And so the best way to demonstrate whether that is true or not is to just go through the scenes and total up the numbers. So 77 throughout season 10, 77 scenes in the Pacific Coast states, 57 scenes in the neutral zone, 92 in the greater Nazi Reich, and then a negligible number in under 5. And the breakdown of that, each episode contained roughly 21 to 23 scenes. So if you were to take all the scenes total and just make them one composite episode of like 21 scenes, then the greater Nazi Reich would have just for that storyline 4 episodes out of the 10. The Pacific Coast states would have 3. So greater Nazi Reich, there was 1 more episode just detailing the stuff going on there as opposed to the Pacific Coast states. And the neutral zone had 2. Twice as many scenes in the greater Nazi Reich as opposed to the neutral zone. And then so that's a total of 9. 1 extra episode is those 5 scenes that were at other locations, and then a variety of scenes from the greater Nazi Reich, Pacific Coast states, and neutral zone, just picking up the spare change. My intuition was correct. There was more emphasis in the greater Nazi Reich. And I had if it wasn't in my review of episode 9, it was in my review of episode 8. I talked about the characters and the roles that each had from each location, and how I felt that the characters from the Greater Nazi Reich, there are a greater number of them, with a greater number of secondary characters responding to their plots than there were in the Pacific Coast states and the neutral zone. And this number bears it out. 92 scenes for the Greater Nazi Reich. So all those main character, second tier character, and then second banana characters from the Greater Nazi Reich just took up more airtime. And one of my complaints of the season has been that the neutral zone plots and the Pacific Coast state plots needed more fleshing out. The conflict and especially the Pacific Coast states, I wanted to see more of Japan, the hierarchy of Japan. We see so much of Germany, but of the Greater Nazi Reich, but almost nothing of the Japanese powers. In episode 2, I want to say, we got to see maybe it was episode 1, something about the conflict between Japanese Army and Navy, and then gone. Like, you didn't see that conflict ever again. So I will discuss that more when I do the season review at the end of this installment. But bear that in mind, there was more emphasis on the Greater Nazi Reich this season. I suspect in season 2 as well, because of the Berlin plotline. Season 1, I'm not so sure. It may have been a little more balanced in season 1. For the acting, oh no, I'm sorry, that goes later. There is, as always, there's going to be, as always, the plot summary, which comes courtesy of Amazon Prime. Juliana's attempt to stop the Nazis lands her in a precarious position. Himmler and John Smith lead a lavish celebration of Year Zero. Amid a series of successes, Smith faces a setback. Ghio returns to San Francisco with a prize, performs an act out of kindness for a friend. They don't have the end, they just have the comma in the plot summary. So to make that grammatically correct, I added an end. Now, the plot summary has something about Tagomi, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Tagomi's even in the last episode. Tagomi makes a difficult decision. I think that happened in episode 9, where he decides to meet with John Smith. And then finally, Ed returns to San Francisco and reconnects with children. And now let's talk about the plot, the overall plot of the episode. So Juliana's attempt to stop the Nazis lands her in a precarious position. Well, the Lackawanna setting is a great setting. And then we got the mine crawling, which was cool. It was a different look for the series. And then having them have a gunfight in the mine was also interesting. It was very high action, high adventure. Something the series doesn't always have. It has occasionally, but not every episode. It tends to focus more on the intrigue than it does the combat and the action. So that was cool to see. But my main complaint with that, with the Lackawanna setting, is how Juliana and the rebellion's presence gets revealed to the Nazis. And it's just total contrivance. It's the great, oh, something falls down. Oh, hey, Nazis see there's some rebels crawling around in the mine shaft, the air conditioning duct. I've said before, coincidence is it's a really weak form of plotting. You want all action to directly come from character, because then not only are you moving the story forward, if it comes from the character, it reveals something about the character's nature. Having a great fall down because it's weak says nothing about the characters. It's just accident. Time and time again in season 3, we get coincidence as the motivator for moving the plot forward. I can only lay that at the foot of the showrunner. The showrunner is the one dictating how the plot advances throughout the season. And his decisions, could be hers, but in this case his, Eric Overmyer, his decisions outweigh the scriptwriter for the episode. So if the showrunner says, rebels crawl up into the air shaft and then get spotted by the German Nazis, the scriptwriters can only do their best job within the confines of the time they have. If the showrunner gives them 20 beats to hit, then they're not going to have time to build up the character motivating that reveal. Instead of creating a MacGuffin, let's say that there was a MacGuffin in the episode. There was a tool, a device, a doohingy that powers the machine that opens the gateway. And after the gateway opens and Joseph Mengele, sends the quote-unquote volunteers through the portal, the machine kind of blows up. What if it was the MacGuffin is the reason for that machine exploding, and the rebels see Mengele or one of the Nazis go in the machine, say, "Oh, the doohickeys broken. We will need to replace it. It's in the office," and that precipitates one of the rebels making the decision, let's say Juliana, to go get it, put their own life in danger, because it will be better to grab the doohickey and end the Nazi threat now from the office, even if you're putting your life in danger, than it will be to have to return later. That decision would have revealed the courage of the character making it, in this case Juliana, and let's say the sharpshooter goes with her because he gets killed, and I know that's going to play into season 3. My guess is Juliana goes the other side and grabs the sharpshooter that's killed in the mines from alternate Earth and brings him back with her, and then uses him to fight against the Nazis. That's my guess. Because later in the episode when they try to kill Himmler and fail, they fail because it's not the sharpshooter making the shot. So that's a way of the scriptwriter showing the absence of the sharpshooter makes a great difference in the effectiveness of the rebels. Himmler and John Smith, so that's about the destruction of Statue of Liberty. And another disappointment because the trailer had the song In the Name of Love by U2, and it was claimed that U2 had never licensed that song before. So we all believed, because it's kind of a hopeful song, that the rebels would make a difference this season. And with the destruction of Statue of Liberty, I thought that's where the scene would happen, and it never happened, not even in this season. That song was never played. So we were all kind of fooled. All the hubbub, the buzz about U2 licensing that song, anyone who assumed that song would be in the series would have been mistaken. It appeared never in the season. And so our hopes that that song would mark the turning point of the rebels against the Nazis occurring in season 3 didn't happen. I just want to say, it's really hot. I know some of you, right now I'm filming this in December 2018. So of course, Americans, Europeans are watching this. To hear me say it's so hot right now, probably feel envious. But the ambient temperature in Saigon, Vietnam is 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm having trouble with my air conditioning, and I'm at the top of an apartment unit. So I'm guessing right now the ambient temperature in my room is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to take off my glasses. Oh, yeah, I'm just dripping wet. So I only mention that because that's the second time within 5 minutes I've reached for the water bottle, but believe me, I really need it right now. Whew, Jesus, pardon me, sorry. It's so hot. Okay, let's continue. No, I need more water. Hold on. Whew. In your mind, just imagine where I'm filming. The condition I'm filming in is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll be in the shoe. You'll put yourself in the shoes that I'm in right now. Smith faces a setback. Oh, that's with Helen leaving. So that's interesting. I think I don't mind that if we lost being able to look at the the Pacific Coast states this season because of so much time spent in the Greater Nazi Reich. If one of the benefits of that, beneficiaries, was Helen's character, I'm all for it because she had a very, in my opinion, very interesting plotline this season. And the writers have a very difficult task with all the women characters, given the time period and the culture surrounding women. Feminism had not happened. This is 63. well, in our world, feminism was just beginning. And I think like in 68, where you had women protesting the, what's the beauty contest? Oh, there was a famous protestation of a beauty contest, which I believe was in the mid to late 60s. That's when it really became mainstream. So it was like in the early 60s when feminism began to happen. But in this world, forget it. It's not happened. So the characters that we have, the women that the writers have a little more leeway with, are Juliana, and she pays the price for that, for being that liberated, and Nicole Dormer, and she's allowed that because she's Lebensstrom, so she's more or less aristocratic, and she paid for that licentiousness, quote unquote licentiousness, at the end of the episode when Himmler took her away for reindoctrination. But all other women, the writers have the challenge of finding agency for the women characters because the culture doesn't allow them agency. And with Helen, we saw her conflict with that in her psychotherapy. And the flowering of that, which I mentioned before, it was a two-edged sword. That it gave her the individuality she had been lacking, and it helped her move past some of her grief. But by doing so, it made her independent, and by being independent, she no longer felt safe in her culture. She could no longer exist within her culture. She had to flee it. And in this episode, it's kind of like the chickens coming home to roost for John Smith, when he discovers that Helen's left not because out of fear for the nurse per se, but fear for John and the role that he occupies within Nazi Reich. As long as she's with him, her children are going to be in jeopardy because John's going to do the bidding of Himmler. And if Himmler's the one that sent the nurse to check to see if the children had the beginnings of muscular dystrophy, John won't be able to protect her and her children. And she felt remorse that she didn't stop Thomas from committing suicide. And we saw in episode 9, she found the courage to take her children out of that situation. And the way to do that was just to leave her husband and leave her apartment, leave everything, leave it all behind. So I'm quite intrigued to see what happens. Part of me believes she will go back and that it'll be tragedy for Helen Smith. She won't be able to avoid going back to John, but we'll see. Amid a series of successes, Smith faces a setback. We just discussed that. Keto returns to San Francisco with a prize, performs an act of kindness. We will discuss that in the next segment. Tagomi didn't happen. Ed returns to San Francisco, reconnects with children. So here's one of my criticisms, that DJ Qualls is good. He's capable of doing both humor and drama. And mainly they've had that character do drama, a couple comedic bits, but DJ Qualls is versatile enough. His character is important enough in the plot that he can do both. But Robert Childen plays a very important role in the book, but his role within the TV series is a little different, and I don't believe the actor does the drama so well. And what we have now, Cowboy Jack, who's almost a caricature, really. Cowboy Jack, Ed, and Robert, that should be the Three Stooges. That should be played for comedy. But I don't think they have anyone on their staff who can write comedy well. And to be able to insert those comedy scenes in a very heavy drama requires masterful touch of tone. And I don't know if they have the ability to do that. Can you think of comedy within the show, like a real comedic scene within the 3 seasons? No, but it should be, because that would be playing to the strengths of the characters, and we don't see that. So instead, the scene where we finally get the turn. We were wondering if Robert Childen would have a turn. In the book, he has a turn. It occurs. They play the scene in season 1. But they don't give Robert Childen the turn. It's when he's talking to the Japanese lawyer about selling American memorabilia. And in the book, he's given the conflict of appearing weak to the Japanese lawyer, but agreeing to commodifying the necklace that contains that wu that was created by Frank. The Japanese lawyer is aware that it's counterfeit, but it has wu, and if I remember the plot of the book right, I might be a little bit off. And he wants to mass manufacture that necklace. He has connections that can mass manufacture the necklace. And Robert Childen realizes that if he agrees to this, to the Japanese lawyer's mind, he will be saying that all Americans have no soul. All we know is commerce, by allowing something that contains wu to be corrupted by being commodified. So he declines. He declines the lawyer's offer to mass manufacture the necklace. And in so doing, he gives up a huge financial opportunity, but in exchange, he keeps a little bit of his soul. And Robert Childen has never made that turn in a TV show. And it looked like they played the scene like maybe he won't even make that turn here. But by agreeing to display Frank's poster, rebellious poster, off the Coit Tower in San Francisco, Robert Childen has finally made that turn that he made in the book, where he sacrifices commerce for art, for soul, for meaning. So it was nice to see that happen, but I'm not convinced that actor is suited for drama, or the character, the way he portrays that character. The character has been kind of thin, and I think it would have been better for satire. And I think the series has needed Dick's dark satire. Dick wrote very dark books with a touch of satire within them, and the series has never really captured that part of Philip K. Dick's tone. And that is the conclusion of describing the plot. Okay, so I hope you'll join me for the next installment, where we'll discuss what I think is one of the best acting scenes within episode 10, and then I'll give my final thoughts for the series, for the season. For the acting in episode 10, I thought there was one scene that was interesting in that it is the kind of the resolution of what happened to Ghio in episode 9, and all the questions that raised about what it might mean, what it might entail for Ghio's character, if there would be an evolution. Would he make that turn? I had mentioned that one of the associate producers of the show said that Ghio's story is the story of an unwilling immigrant. And that implied that Ghio would acclimate, that he would become American in some way. But we hadn't seen that at all throughout the first 3 seasons. But there's the scene between him and Gina's character. Gina played by Gagne Dio Horn, and then, of course, Ghio played by Joel De La Fuente. And in the scene, Ghio buys up the contract, more like the slavery contract that Gina had with her madam, whoever it was the owner of, could have been Sir, of the Hostess bar. Madams, just to be stereotypical. But in any event, Ghio gives her freedom along with some money. And what is the motivation for Ghio here? Why is he doing this? So there could be a couple reasons. It could be that he loves her, and so he would do it anyway. And what happened to Frank doesn't play a part. It could be there's a little bit of guilt, and it's blood money that he's giving her to ease his conscience. He's taken one life, so now to make the scales balanced, he's giving a life. He's giving her freedom, giving her life back. It could also be that in his encounter with Frank, he has learned some empathy. That was the key question. Can Ghio feel empathy? If he feels empathy, he is human, according to Philip K. Dick. And remember, by that question, Philip K. Dick is asking more than he's giving a definition of human that needs more than just flesh and bone to be fulfilled. He's looking for the spiritual quality of humanity, of humanity, of being humane. You can be human and not be humane. And as I mentioned last episode for Dick, he talks about the Nazi guards who are able to kill children with impunity and have no guilt because they lacked empathy for those children. They had demonized them and put them into a box of less than human, of being other. So for Dick, the way to resolve that question of how do you know who a human is, and because Dick wrote within the realm of science fiction, where we're talking about artificial intelligence and robots, where those questions become very important, then it would be, how do you tell a robot that looks exactly like a human from a human? Like he did it, like what the question in Blade Runner, the question that was posed in Blade Runner, what separates a replicant from a human? And the answer being empathy. So here we see maybe Keto has some empathy, because maybe it's not, if it's love, he's just lusting after her, but it's an object he can never possess because of his wife. Then he's not made the turn. He doesn't have empathy. But if he gives her freedom, because now through the death of Frank, someone that he in some ways respected and only killed because of his sense of duty, to not kill Frank would bring dishonor to him, in which case if he had dishonor, he'd have to take his own life, being Japanese. If you suffered the greatest dishonor, the only way to retain honor for your family is to kill yourself, to commit seppuku. If we look at it that way, that this is now an act of that empathy that he gained for Frank, and the only reason he killed Frank was because after Frank had blown up the Japanese embassy, and he learned and Keto learned that Frank was alive, the only way to resolve that tension was either Keto kills himself, because the dishonor of leaving Frank alive would mean he'd have to kill himself, or he kills Frank. But if he kills Frank unwillingly, he feels empathy for Frank, he feels respect for Frank, he only goes through with it because it's the honorable thing to do. The only way to even the balance of those scales in that case is to give freedom to someone else. And here he gives it to Gina. And maybe that's, given that the associate producer says that the story of Keto this season is of an unwilling immigrant, and he does not, we're going to guess because she kisses him, and she even, when he first enters the apartment, she even says, what do you want, a drink, to relax, something more? He declines all those things. He doesn't take up the chance to have sex with her when he could, because for him, sex is not the issue. The issue is doing the reasonable thing, the empathetic thing. He took freedom, now he gives freedom. If he had sex with her, then it's no longer an ideal. He's no longer committing an action out of pure ideals. He's committing an action out of impulse. And I think we can say, for Keto, he's never been one to act out of impulse. Out of all the characters in the show, we could say that John Smith acts purely uses his intellect, but acts out of impulse to protect his family. And Keto is the opposite. Keto acts out of duty. But here, we see that maybe in doing something out of duty by killing Frank, he also recognizes the flaw in that. And if that is the case, he's making the turn. And if he does make a turn, that'll make for some interesting drama in the next season. So that's a plus. I'm going to talk about it right now. The pluses and negatives of the season. If Keto makes a turn, that will be a plus, because we'll see some development in the character, and it'll make the killing of Frank, which I thought was completely useless because the character should just stay died in season 2, even though there were some of the best scenes in season 3 were with Frank. Take away that character and use those scenes for other characters. If the end result is we get a different Keto, then maybe yes. Maybe that'll be for the benefit of the show. Give me a second to drink some water, and then I'll give my thoughts. Final thoughts about season 3. Bottle's empty. So hot. Okay, final thoughts. Mixed. I think about an even number of good things and bad things. At the end, I would say that it's not above average, but the potential for the series is to be above average. So I will return. Benefits, the positives. It addressed key questions of the lore. This is important. If you're hinting at a lore, you're creating mystery around the lore, your payoff for that lore needs to feel deserved. It needs to be feel that it's been thought out, not cheap. An example of that is the traveling between planes. We're given these rules, and they feel like they've been thought out, that they've been considered before they would pay off. That maybe before season 3, these things were already thought out by the writers. And so when Tagome went to see his family, it's given the hint that the double of him committed suicide. That means that rule of traveling was thought out already before that season had begun. So by the time we spell it out in season 3, it's an aha moment for the viewer. It should be an aha moment. The pieces should fall in place, which is good. That means there's a plan. It's a good plan, and it's executed well. So that's a positive. They drew from Philip K. Dick in a way that made the show better by using the death scene of Joe that was in the book and the show. And doing it in a way that still fulfilled that scene from the book, but came at it from a different angle because we had the reprogramming from Joe. It kind of had the best of both worlds. It's one of the best scenes in the book, a very powerful scene in the book, and it's a very powerful scene in season 5, well shot. And the fact there was no music is a plus for the composer of the show. But because the way they got to that scene was different, that shows that the writers were able to have a fixed plot point and get to that plot point in a way that felt organic to the character, which a lot of the plot points that needed to be hit in this season were not organic. They were very contrived. But that was a benefit, a positive. The Nazi plans, those come from Philip K. Dick's book, and it makes sense. Why would they be interested in time travel? Unless they can use it to exploit those other worlds somehow. So the way they brought that in, and it's the Nazis were a little crazy, a lot crazy. Anharby, just Wikipedia, the things that they were researching. Mengele, the experiments he did. Hitler was not quite altogether there. So yeah, having a kind of half-baked plan like that makes sense. And any other show, maybe not so much, but because it's drawing on a historical characters who are a little bit off, if your plan is a little bit off, it all matches. And the German plot lines were fine. They've been season 2, they were amazing. Season 3, good. The fact that they spent more time on the German plot lines at the exclusion of the neutral zone in the Japanese the Pacific Coast states, I'm not so happy with. But it is what's there. It is what it is. What's there was well executed, and we got the actor. Oh, he plays Hoover. I wasn't expecting to mention his name, and now that I have to, I can't remember it. But he's a great actor. I really like him a lot. And I'm a little bit sad that we lost his character after episode 6, I believe was his last appearance. Hopefully, I imagine he will appear again in season 3, and I'm hoping he will. They delayed the whole release of season 3 just to get the sign off of the Hoover family for that character. So I don't think they do that unless they intended to use that character again in season 4. Okay, so now the negatives. The showrunner changed some of the characters a little bit. Nicole Dormer she was flighty, but I don't believe she would have been that short-sighted to fall into the hands of Himmler the way that she did. And Ed, I don't mind that Ed's gay, but the fact that it just kind of got sprung on us. I mean, you can say, oh, it's kind of there with Frank, but that could also be he's just a very admired Frank, a very good friend. What was the other big gay plot line? These are controversial on Reddit. That's why I'm mentioning them. They're not controversial to me. I think the Ed was a little bit. Oh, that's right. they were the Reddit crew. Some of them were unhappy with Nicole Dormer and Thelma. I'm pretty sure her name is Thelma, the journalist. But that fit in perfectly with Nicole's character, the wannabe ne'er-do-well, the wannabe hippie, the aristocratic scion who can get away with things that other characters can until she can no longer get away with them. That was fine for me. Plus we had I think they mentioned that she had slept with women in season 2 when there's the kind of rave scene that Joe and Nicole go to in the mansion with the other Lebensstrom and other youth, other German youth. So yeah, the fact that they're changing characters, I do have to say, to the showrunner's credit, there was a notable lack of retconning, which happens sometimes when you bring in a new creator. They want to change things to make the story match their vision, and this did not happen so much. I can only guess either Eric Overmyer really had no desire to retcon anything, or if he did, in his discussions with the creatives behind the scenes, such as Philip K. Dick's daughter or the director of this episode, I have his name written down so I can look up easily. Daniel Percival. They may have nixed any ideas that Eric Overmyer had about retconning, if he intended to do any sort of retconning, but there is none really, which is good. I think retconning done well is fine. Alan Moore, when he took over Swamp Thing, this may be kind of out of the reach of some viewers, but I'm a fan of comic books. And in the 1980s, Alan Moore took a character called character Swamp Thing, and he retconned a little bit of the history. And he did it in a way where it just felt like, oh, that's really the character. He's uncovering who the character really was. The other writers that worked on the character maybe missed the mark, but through his retcon, he uncovered something that comments upon the core of the character. So when retconning actually excavates something, brings out more of what the core of the character is, then I'm fine. I feel like it should be done. But most retconning just feels like the new creator has an idea, and the only way for them to get it into the current show or series will be to just change a little bit of the past history to make the current character fit what their vision is. And that I don't like so much, and I think it happens more often than the good retconning. Frank Redux, which I'd mentioned, the scenes were good, some of the best of the season, but take those away and use them to build other characters. The Neutral Zone needed it more. Wyatt, we could have had more of Wyatt at the earlier part of the season. Contrived writing, all those making the plot, hitting those plot points, so coincidental events, characters being in the same place, the great falling apart just at the wrong moment. Shallow treatment of Japan and Sabra, not much depth added to those two milieus and Neutral Zone, and then music, all those were negative. So yeah, the final score is about balanced. So, you could say mediocre, average, but I'll be back for season 4 because the concept is so strong. And I'm hoping that the showrunner for season 4 will be able to kind of elevate the series. As long as the plot's not as contrived and more character-centered. I love season 2. It's my favorite season. I like season 1 a lot. I shouldn't say like, I adored it. And let's say we loved season 1, adored season 2, adored season 1, loved season 2. Season 3, not so much. I had problems. But at the end of the day, we'll be here. We'll be here for season 4. And I hope you'll stay on my channel. I plan to do Marvelous Miss Maisel starting next week. And if you're watching this way in the future, then that completed review hopefully is on my channel. And I hope you'll return for more. That's all for now. Take care and be well. Hello. Welcome to